Welcome back to Normal Island. I'm Curtis Daly, and of course I'm joined by the amazing Kevin Logan. Kevin, I'm so happy you're back on. How are you doing?
I'm happy to be in your presence, my good sir.
My good sir. That's a new one, actually, my good sir. Keep it up, because I quite like that, you know. Maybe throughout the show, or was that maybe too much to ask?
Well, look, we'll have a few drinks. We'll see where the night takes.
Very good, very good. We've got a packed out show tonight. This is what we've got coming up for you. Diane Abbott has been suspended from the Labour Party for the second... Oh, sorry, we had a video pop-up there. Diane Abbott is suspended from the Labour Party again. Right-wingers have a huge meltdown over Labour's votes at 16 policy. And there were far-right riots in Epping. As always, remember to like the stream. And if you're not a subscriber, please hit that button. We'll, of course, be getting to your comments at the end. So please make sure you're very busy in the chat. But let's get on with the show. Diane Abbott has been suspended from the Labour Party for the second time. Reason being is due to her comments on racism. Diane Abbott has been suspended from the Labour Party for a second time after saying she did not regret her past remarks on racism, as Keir Starmer once again attempted to reassert his grip over his backbenchers. The veteran MP faces an investigation over her defence of remarks more than 2 years ago that people of colour experienced racism all their lives, which was different from the prejudice experienced by Jewish people, Irish people and travellers. Now, if you don't remember the first time Diane was suspended after she talked about the hierarchy of racism that people of colour will experience people of colour will experience racism differently to Jewish people and travellers, as racism based on skin colour is more apparent. Now, this was in a letter written to The Observer. However, the controversial part was where she compared being Jewish to having ginger hair. That comment raised eyebrows. Clearly, that was an ill-judged comment on an otherwise very salient point. She then later apologised. But in an interview on Radio 4, she said she had no regrets about her past comments.
You got into terrible trouble for a letter you wrote to The Observer about racism. And you appeared to suggest, in the view of some of your critics anyway, that the kind of anti-Semitism that the Jewish community suffered, or travellers suffered, or Irish people suffered, was somehow different from the racism that you as a young black person had suffered. You were suspended and there was a great hoo-ha. Do you look back on that with regret?
No, not at all. Clearly, there must be a difference between racism, which is about colour, and other types of racism, because you can see a traveller or a Jewish person walking down the street. You don't know. You don't know unless you stop to speak to them or you're in a meeting with them. But if you see a black person walking down the street, you see straight away that they're black. They are different types of racism.
So here's the thing, right? Diane is so right about the hierarchy of racism, and not just in terms of skin colour. Anti-Semitism is taken seriously. Even the most right-wing racist knuckleheads pretend to care about anti-Semitism, whereas anti-brown racism, Islamophobia, is completely normalised. But that doesn't mean her comment about anti-Semitism and people having ginger hair is the same. So I'm a little bit confused as to why she doubled down after apologising. Now, she has been a firebrand in fighting racism, and I don't want to see her legacy tarnished by saying some clumsy stuff. Having said that, she could just be referring to her comments about the hierarchy of racism, in which she is absolutely right to say she has no regrets. Now, I thought this was a very good clip from Ollie Dugmore explaining the hierarchy of racism on Victoria Derbyshire.
Fair-minded British people would accept the spirit of what she was trying to say, which is that if you were present as an ethnic minority, you experience racism differently. It's not to say that Jewish people don't experience racism. It's not to say that Irish people don't experience racism. But if your skin is a different colour to other people, the way that that racism manifests against you is different. And I think most fair-minded people would accept that.
Kevin, what's your thoughts on this? I mean, do you think it's particularly noteworthy that a man in Keir Starmer not too long ago said, we're an island of strangers, and has suspended a black woman MP for the second time on the issue of racism?
Yeah, I mean it's ludicrous that Keir Starmer, having virtually quoted Enoch Powell, like you say, quite recently, and having been ramping up the rhetoric about immigration consistently in order to try and appeal to reform voters and, let's be honest, fascists throughout the country, it is now picking up on this minor little nitpick of a point. And I think that's precisely what it is, because as you elucidated and as Ollie Dugmore did very well, I think, on the Victoria Derbyshire show, that her point is basically correct, that unless you knew that somebody was either Jewish or of Romany traveller stock, you wouldn't necessarily know that they were anything different to you whatsoever. But whereas a person who is visibly black or Asian, BAME, you obviously does suffer that kind of interpersonal racism much more extensively throughout their life, because there's no way of hiding that. It's the old nonsense about when Black Lives Matter gets brought up and people say, well, what about police lives? Well, police lives aren't lives, are they? A police officer chooses to be a police officer, and at the end of his shift, he takes his uniform off and he's just a civilian again. A black person can't take their skin off. They're always a black person. So clearly, the way in which they experience racism is very different. And I think it's a nitpick because she wasn't absolutely clear about what part of the previous negative letter thing that she wrote, the original controversy from 2 years ago, she was referring to when she said she had no regrets. But it's pretty obvious that, having apologized for the very, very silly thing she said about anti-Semitism being the same as having ginger hair, which is obviously wrong and stupid, and I think she accepted that and apologized for it, I don't think she's going back on that, especially when the then follow-on point to that is exactly the point that I and Ollie Dugmore and yourself have elucidated here. So this is clearly an extension of the doubling down and tripling down of going after the left within the Labour Party. That's what's taking place here. In addition to the four MPs, the four further MPs who were had the whip removed from them this week for being left wing with violent intent or something. I don't know exactly. The Labour Party have thought to themselves, the recent trouble they've had isn't because they're too right wing, it's because they're not right wing enough, because that's the Morgan McSweeney playbook. Just be more and more right wing, and then hopefully things will happen and things will change. And that's ultimately, I think, the reason that they're definitely going to lose the next election, because in order to have any chance of having re-electability come 2028 or 2029, they were going to have a change, a massive change. The benefits rebellion and debacle could have been that moment. They could have decided to change and become an actual Labour Party and maybe win some of those voters back. And they decided, no, they're just going to continue with the same process. And so they're going to become even more and more unpopular and lose further MPs as they become disenfranchised and lose the whip. And eventually it will whittle down what was a very significant majority into not a very workable one at all. And Keir Starmer will go down as a massively unsuccessful Prime Minister.
I mean, do you think that the response to even this, right, is an example of the hierarchy of racism? Because I feel like that had Diane Abbott, or maybe it wasn't Diane Abbott, somebody else, particularly a white MP, had made a clumsy comment about a different race that wasn't Jewish people, that there wouldn't be this kind of uproar. But a black woman says something in conversation about anti-Semitism, there's like it's gone through with a fine tooth comb. And the boot is there, stamped down really quickly. Do you think that Diane Abbott being suspended for the second time is in of itself an example of the hierarchy of racism?
Yeah, I think it is, absolutely. I certainly think that the way in which the media have treated her ever since she got into politics got into Parliament back in the 1980s, remarkably the first black female MP ever, which is crazy when you consider that happened, I think it was right the year I was born, which is absolutely insane to think. But she's been treated very differently. If you notice the way in which, say, Boris Johnson, a white privileged upper class man, has been virulently, horrifically racist in any number of ways. We can all go through the litany of black post boxes and all the rest of it, all his horrible anti-migrant rhetoric he's had over the course of time. Describing Africans as pickaninnies with watermelon smiles, I believe was a phrase. And he went on to become not just the Mayor of London, but then an MP two different times in two different places, and then Prime Minister. So clearly there are some things you are allowed to be racist about and some things you are not. And I think actually, not to make everything about Israel-Palestine, but I think it's a pertinent juxtaposition here. The way in which anti-Semitism is involved in that conversation shows that certainly powers in the Western world are very, very sensitive to anti-Semitism. Whereas anti-Muslim sentiment is rampant. It's throughout the entirety of Western politics and media in a way that various people, even conservatives, have pointed out over the course of time, because that kind of racism is just tolerated. So clearly there is a hierarchy where some racism is bad. Not all racism is to be condemned or even to be stopped by the political elites.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think you can actually separate the West's support for Israel and the way anti-Semitism is viewed in this country, right? The smears of anti-Semitism against those who are not being anti-Semitic, or the accusations of anti-Semitism when you criticize Israel, I think it fundamentally goes to the top, right? If we were in a situation where it was flipped, Palestine was the establishment, Israel was the occupied force, and we stood behind Palestine, I could see that Islamophobia would be taken seriously, anti-Semitism wouldn't be taken as seriously. I mean, would you agree with that assessment? I think it's probably what you kind of said.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And actually, I think it's worse in other places. It's sort of ironic that Starmer met with Chancellor Merz of Germany this week, because in Germany it's especially sensitive, obviously for historical reasons. Anti-Semitism is cracked down upon it with ruthlessness. Even when it's not actually anti-Semitism, it's just anti-Zionism or protest against Israel in any way whatsoever. Whereas you have the AfD, an openly and avowedly Islamophobic political party, which is becoming the largest of the political parties and taking over state governments, and very possibly at some point will become the largest party in a governing coalition at some point, potentially. And that's just tolerated. Though, if you had a virulently anti-Semitic party, it quite rightly would be shut down by the German government. An anti-Islam party, an anti-Muslim party, in a country that has a significant Muslim population, let's not forget, those Muslim population, their viewpoints and their safety is not taken into account, because apparently in that instance, democracy trumps people's safety for some reason.
So Diane Abbott was one of the people of the so-called Labour left, it's always ever shrinking, among John McDonnell and some other people, said they wouldn't join this Jeremy Corbyn Zara Sultana party, right? I mean, that's probably changed now. I mean, first of all, do you think that Diane Abbott will return to the party? Do you think they'll finally expel her? Because clearly they wanted to rid the left. And do you think she'd potentially join this party?
I think she's done now in the Labour Party. This is explaining that this is about the hierarchy of racism and the fact that she, as a black woman, is treated differently than white men are. This is a settling of an old score. They wanted to do this, and they tried to do this before last year's general election, but because of sort of bizarrely a wave of sympathy based on how horrifically she'd been treated, they had to take her back into the fold. And so essentially they've just waited and bided their time and done the hit job now, because they've got a vague scintilla of a kernel of something they can grab onto and use as the excuse to do the thing they always wanted to do in the first place, which was get rid of her as quickly as possible. Whether she's changed and wants to be part of the Jeremy Corbyn thing, who knows? I mean, you've got to bear in mind age and longevity, right? Both Corbyn and Abbott have been in Parliament a very long time. Are they really the people you want fronting a new thing? To a degree, yes, because they've got name recognition. But to a degree, you also need, younger blood like Zara Sultana coming through as well. So whether she wants to be involved in that or not, who knows? But ultimately, they need to get their act together. This political party, if it was going to happen, needed to have happened already. The fact that they're now dilly-dallying and announcing things when they've got nothing ready to go, and they're not even a registered political party yet. They don't have a name. They don't have any policy basis. Get your act together, lads. This is either worth doing or it's not.
I also think Diane Abbott is in a unique position which she finds herself in, where none of the Labour left find themselves in. Like, she actually, I wouldn't say allies, but has sympathy with those across the political spectrum, right? Because I think because she's the first black woman MP, that there is some kind of respect she garners from people who wouldn't otherwise give any socialist respect. John McTernan has defended Diane Abbott in the past. He defended her again. He said, leave her alone. So I think she does have that kind of safety cushion, but I think I agree they're going to finally get rid of her. And also in terms of this new party, I think she's standing down in the next election, but maybe as just sort of a campaigning tool, she could get behind it.
Yeah, I mean, she could still join the party and be an electioneering asset. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
All right, then, let's leave that there, and we'll move on to our second story. The woke right are having a meltdown over Labour's policy of allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to vote. This comes after Labour reaffirms their commitment to lowering the voting age. I think it's really important that 16 and 17-year-olds have the vote because they are old enough to go out to work. They are old enough to pay taxes, so they pay in, Prime Minister Keir Starmer said. I think if you pay in, you should have the opportunity to say what you want your money to spend on, which way the government should go, Starmer added. There are currently around 1.6 million 16 and 17-year-olds in the UK. Far-right turf activist Posey Parker asks the question, did anyone vote for this? Well, since it was in their manifesto, yes, millions of people voted for it. Julie Hartley-Brewer gave her reasons on Talk TV.
Just some breaking news for you. I mean, just when you think things couldn't get any worse. You know how 16 and 17-year-olds, well, they're trusted to have sex, and they can have, sex with someone of the same sex. That was banned for many years. Not allowed to buy cigarettes, not allowed to buy vapes, not allowed to buy a pint or a glass of wine in the pub. That would be illegal. And why? Well, because we don't really trust those people to make those decisions. Not allowed to get married. Not allowed to get married under the age of 18 either, these days anymore. Required to stay in full-time educational training of some sort at the age of 16 and 17. However, as of the next election, as just confirmed in the news from the government today, 16 and 17-year-olds will be allowed to vote for the first time across the whole of the UK. This brings the whole country in line with Scottish and Welsh elections. We're going to let kids vote.
The horror. And I love that. I mean, I feel like she thinks she's got like a really good take here. She thinks she's slam dunk with that. But in her little monologue, she said, well, here's some things 16 and 17-year-olds can do, and here's some things they can't do. Okay, fine. Let voting be one of them things. It's not like they can't do these swaths of things, and then allowing a 16 and 17-year-old vote is sort of out of place. And she also fails to mention that 16 and 17-year-olds work and pay taxes. They can join the army. And of course, I mean, she did mention the age of consent. No taxation without representation, right? Peter Lloyd, the right-wing commentator, somehow managed to shoehorn Shamima Begum into this. Shamima Begum at 16, she didn't know what she was doing. She was just a kid. She can't be held responsible. 16-year-olds voting, totally fine. They're grown-ups. Give them power. Well, first of all, she was 15, you wardrobe. Secondly, you can literally flip the argument around the other way. It's a moot point. Plus, you could be groomed at any age. Nigel Farage has accused Labour of rigging the vote. New, Nigel Farage has stated the following regarding the extension of voting rights to 16 and 17-year-olds. Giving 16 and 17-year-olds the right to vote is an attempt to rig the political system. Now, reducing the vote does actually advance... I'll start that again. Reducing the vote does advantage Labour. As we can see, they are ahead in the polls when it comes to this age cohort. There's always someone else who would There's also someone else who would greatly benefit from reducing the voting age. The poll shows that Jeremy Corbyn is the most popular politician with 16 and 17-year-olds beating out the other leaders by a wide margin. It's not even close. Kevin, I mean, what do you make of the woke rights outrage of this policy? And is it truly rigging the vote?
Firstly, your use of the word wardrobe as an insult is beautiful. Well done. And secondly, yes, the right wing are up in arms about this because they know it hurts them electorally. And Keir Starmer is doing this, A, because it was in the manifesto, but B, because he thinks it will electorally help him. It's politics. That's how politics works, lads. Get used to it. The idea that Nigel Farage or Julia Hartley-Brewer are so deeply against the rigging of the system, when neither of them spoke out against the introduction of voter ID laws, which have disenfranchised tens of thousands of the poorest and most disadvantaged citizens in our society from the franchise, nor did they seemingly have too much of a problem with Brexit being won on the back of illegally stolen data and all the rest of it, through Cambridge Analytica and all the rest of it. They are absolutely for rigging the system. They hate any extension of the franchise whatsoever because democracy is anathema to them. They know they can't win in a fair fight, so they have to rig it themselves. And as we all know with Conservatives, every accusation is a confession. They are the ones who have been seeking to rig it completely and utterly, including, of course, owning all of the media and setting the agenda constantly. And one little statistic from that graph you showed about the leader's popularity isn't just those who support Jeremy Corbyn. If you look at the percentage that disapprove of him, it's significantly less. So even with all of the smears held against him, people aren't buying it. People are actually still very fond of him because he was one of the few politicians ever, within the lifetime of anyone under the age of 50 who's offered any hope for the future. And that's why his name recognition, even years after he was in the leadership of the Labour Party, and actually even within the Labour Party, he's still the most popular politician in the country. And it shows. I absolutely support this policy, because of all of the things you can criticise Labour for, doing something they said they were going to do, one of the very few things they said they were going to do that they actually did do, seems like an odd place to start with that. And secondly, it annoys the shit out of Julia Hartley-Brewer. And what's better than that?
Nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, some commentators, and I assume she's in that, I'm sure she's made this argument before, right, say that young people swing to the left because they're stupid, which isn't a particularly insightful analysis. What's your reasons as to why young people are more left-wing? I know obviously you said about Jeremy Corbyn is very popular with young people because he actually, let's be honest, British culture and the political system, they hate young people. They're all rigged towards, they all want to buy the votes off older people. Granted, they vote more. So they ignore young people. And of course, young people look to Jeremy Corbyn and think, at least he spoke about us. But what, in your analysis, why is it? And take out Jeremy Corbyn, for example, because this is a trend that happens sort of even across the pond. Why are young people more left-wing?
Well, because the political establishment, the regular political parties, as you say, play the electoral mathematics game of older people tend to vote more, so you structure your policy positions toward them, and therefore the younger cohorts, everyone from Gen X downwards, gets left behind and shafted. The boomers and the home-owning boomers especially are the only people who have mattered in Western politics for the last 40 years because of Thatcher/Reaganomics, right? So there's that. Also, all of the cool people are progressive. Literally, look, you name any cool artist, any musician, any film star, they're all pretty progressive people. And like, conservatism is just naff as fuck, really, isn't it? It's awful. So young people don't want to go with that. And in terms of them being stupid, it's incredibly ignorant and profoundly patronising to say that they're too stupid, especially when Julia Hartley-Brewer works for Talk TV, an organisation which is viewed entirely by people with fridge temperature IQs. They're the most pathetic people on the planet. If you look at the average political knowledge of the British voter, if you were to do a test, some sort of poll test, in order to meet a certain threshold of knowledge to be able to vote, the vast majority of people over the age of 18 wouldn't be able to pass that. So the idea that the 16 and 17-year-olds are uniquely unqualified for this is ridiculous because, again, like you say, no taxation without representation. If they're paying tax, they should have a right to say where that tax is spent and hold accountable the people who are spending that tax on their behalf. It's as simple as that. I
mean, look, I've met some amazing, intelligent 16 and 17-year-olds, even younger, right? And I've also met some fucking dumbass 50-year-olds and 6-year-olds, right? I met some fucking stupid-ass 17, 18-year-olds, and I met some brilliant 30-year-olds. Like, being stupid is not an age thing, right? I get when they say about maturity and stuff, but here's the thing, right? I think that when you give young people a voice and you give them that sort of power, they are serious about it, And if they're worried about 16-year-olds voting silly, all right, they vote for the monster raving loony party. There's not enough numbers for them to get in government. It's not really going to change much.
It's so profoundly jarring to hear people talk about, well, as 16 and 17-year-olds can't act responsibly when we are a nation of people who get absolutely tanked up and coked out of our heads on high streets up and down the country and are sick everywhere and have traffic cones in our heads and get your cock out for the policeman. It's that. Do you know what I mean? We are a nation of people trying to smash into Greggs during a race riot. We are not a sensible or a responsible nation. We clearly aren't. We've elected people like Liz Truss to be prime minister. The idea that any part of our political system actually functions is nonsense. And of course, all of the scare tactics of, oh well, this is going to be the downfall of civilization. No, it's been this way for over a decade in Scotland. One of the few places where any kind of functioning democracy in this country actually exists.
I mean, people said the same thing in the 19th century. Oh, well, anyone who doesn't have property can vote. No. Those who have property, they know what they're doing. They deserve to have the vote. Why should you? It's scaremongering. It's just, and also like, help me deconstruct this, right? How is expanding the vote, right, to more people rigging something? Because for me, rigging something is usually trying to disenfranchise people to get the result you want. Yep. But when more people vote, how is that rigging? I feel like that's such a desperate argument, and they're clearly losing. They're losing the argument on this.
Oh no, absolutely is. Yeah, rigging, much like many of their buzzwords, basically just means a thing I don't like.
Yeah, like woke.
Yeah, woke or DEI or SJW or any number of these other things they'll come up with. I'm sure there'll be a new one. CRT was a brief favourite.
Which didn't work over. It works in America a bit more. It doesn't work over. No one knows what the fuck that means.
Well, DEI doesn't either. They're going to get rid of DEI jobs. What does that mean? We don't have DEI jobs. That's not a thing here.
No.
It's like saying, well, we're going to get rid of, I don't know, driving on the right-hand side of the road. No, we're not, because that isn't a thing here. Anyway, yeah, basically it's just a thing they don't like, that they find politically disadvantageous, and so naturally they're pushing back on that, and that's fine, but don't do it dishonestly. You're doing this because you know it hurts you electorally. Not massively, because the actual numbers of people who will take this opportunity up will be relatively small, but it doesn't help Nigel Farage, it doesn't help the Conservative Party, and it doesn't help the right-wing media machine. So they're going to go into hyperdrive about how this is terrible for democracy, whilst trying to get all of their friends in the House of Lords, the unelected chamber, to put this piece of legislation down, I'm sure.
Look, let's be plain, right? Conservatives don't want to expand the vote because young people reject right-wing ideology, right? They don't want that. Labour want to expand the vote because, yes, they think it helps them, right? So you could say both sides are bad in this, but here's the thing. Here's the crucial difference, right? One of them wants less people to vote because they're worried that younger people won't vote for them. The other is saying, let's have more people vote, right? If you expand, the vote and you enfranchise more people, right, and that goes in your favour, that's just a good thing. Maybe the right wing should start offering young people stuff. Instead of saying, oh, we don't want them to vote, it's rigging the system. How about you actually start listening to young people? Because maybe they might vote for you. But I suppose they probably, I mean, they're not going to do that, are they?
No, they're going to rely on boomer votes forever, even as the boomers die off. And of course, this rather puts paid to the idea that, Gen Z have gone so right wing. No, they haven't. There's like two influencers that have skewed the metrics on that. I mean, the actual raw vote is consistently far more progressive than
I have to admit, I bought into that for a short while. I mean, I did look. I mean, polls did show a significant bump for reform with young people, but then you got to break down the numbers, and it was a particular kind of young man, right? But overall, and they're still not polling that well with young people. So I got suckered into that. But polls, if you look at polls in terms of the entire generation rather than gender, it's still overwhelmingly left wing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there is a bump for reform, and like you say, the demographics are interesting to look at. But just look at it's got to be measured against the bump in the overall population, where currently they sit at around a third of the vote, and by far leading in every single poll. I haven't seen a poll for months that didn't have reform top of the the number one party. Even if it didn't have them winning an outright majority, it was certainly they were going to be the biggest party. Whereas in the 18 to 24 demographic, or indeed the 16 and 17 demographic, they're second or possibly third in some of the polling. So
most of
it's
the
a
bump
lie that people are being put out there by these random right wing assholes.
I mean, most of the bump has gone to the Greens. That's just categorically true.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Any party that's benefiting from the young is the Greens.
Well, because progressive voters are leaving the Labour Party because they don't represent core Labour tenants anymore, in the same way that the Conservative voters collapsed because they don't represent Conservative voters, and so they've gone to the Reform Party. So it's ripe right now for either the Green Party or the Jeremy Corbyn hypothetical People's Party of Judea situation, or whatever, or some sort of pact between the two to be able to actually become a genuine political force. They're not going to become the government, but they could easily overtake the Conservative Party at the next general election. And that would be a significant step forward for politics in general.
It's very, very possible, obviously not in seats, but it's very possible the Greens, in terms of vote share, can outpoll the Conservatives. I can see that happening. The Conservatives have gone as low as 15%. Of course, Labour have as well.
No, I mean, when I said overtake them, I mean, like, if they do a political pact between the Green Party, so they stand down in seats, so they don't.
But I'm saying
you could end up with 40, 50 between the Greens and the Jeremy Corbyn party, and 30 or 40 for the Tories, which would be huge.
But what I'm saying is, if there was no Corbyn party, I don't think it's impossible to see the Greens outpoll the Conservatives. I mean, the Greens have got, I think the highest poll was 13%. That's what... I mean, again,
I've seen
polls
down as like 16%, which is at that point it's virtually the margin of error between the
pretty
two.
Much, yeah.
But I think actually Jeremy Corbyn's party, like I say, if they do a proper political pact and they don't vote, they don't take votes off one another in seats where they can win, and along with the Workers' Party of Britain, which by the way I know has a lot of problems, but let's just say it's better to have a socialist that's got some problems than a Tory that's got some problems or whatever. Right? Anyway, the point being, if they don't take votes off with each other in that way, I think Jeremy Corbyn's party would be very, very useful because Jeremy Corbyn can reach people in places that the Greens, unfortunately, so far have not been able to break through. Those traditional Labour heartlands in the north of England and in Scotland, where the Greens, the Greens don't have that much of a showing, certainly in England. Whereas Jeremy Corbyn has name brand recognition and has a loyal voter base there.
Agree, very much agree. But let's move on. But before we go on to our final story, I just want to say if you're enjoying the stream, then please like and subscribe. Just remind viewers that we are 5 volunteers. We do not get paid for this work, but one day we would love for this to be our full-time job. So if you can, then please consider becoming a supporter by going to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There you can become a monthly patron, or there is another link for a one-off donation. Of course, you can also become a YouTube member for just 99p. Now on to our final story. Police officers were injured after they clashed with far-right thugs in Epping. A protest was held outside the Bell Hotel, housing asylum seekers, where 2 people were arrested. Some protesters were seen using fireworks and throwing eggs as a section of High Roads, was closed for the safety of the public and those protesting. Essex Police confirmed several people had disrupted peaceful protests with projectiles and that they had identified several suspects it believed were responsible for damaging police vehicles, the hotel and assaulting officers. Following the disruption outside the Bell Hotel, the police said they also faced significant hostility in Epping Town Centre, with both the Met Police and British Transport Police being called in to help respond. Now, we have footage of some of the protesters attacking police vans.
The van's getting attacked. She stalled it. She can't get out of here. Smash it! Smash it! The back door's open. Look, he's on top of the van. Guys, we are right in the thick of it here. We are right in the thick of it here. He's on top of the van. Guys, this here is absolute mental.
Oi, 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 oi. Fucking embarrassing, isn't it? Now, not only that, but Reform UK councillor James Regan was there too, giving an interview.
We're all British, but we all stand for that Englishness, because that's what England is.
Exactly.
And they're trying to take it away with us. Actually, they're just trying to dilute it out of us. That's more like it.
I think the biggest problem is white people, for want of a better word, British white people in power, creating.
Corrupt.
Correct.
That's not in power, that's in corruption.
Yeah.
They're not powerful people, they're corrupt people. I have lost it with the establishment. It all needs to come down.
Have you ever seen anything like this?
Never.
No,
it all needs to come down, unfortunately. There's only one way when a building's bad or it's got disease in it, and that is take it down to the foundations and start anew. And that's what needs to happen now.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. That's brilliant. Thank you.
These people do not care about attacking the establishment. Their politics, these protests, literally help the establishment keep focusing on race and culture whilst the billionaires and corporations loot this country and make us poorer. Now, listening to that video of the Reform councillor, they're clueless. They have a vague enemy, but they haven't got any structural analysis. There's no logic. And according to him, white men are corrupt and hate other white people. Why? Who knows? Kevin, when these riots happen, many of, call it far-right activity, I would say so, but more and more people are saying, oh, this isn't far-right. Explain to us why these people are wrong.
It's Farage Riots 2 Electric Boogaloo. Let's make it a yearly festival of race riots. That's what it seems to be. A summer of hate every year. Farage and his ilk, and I think you saw that from the Reform councillor there, talking about diluting it out of us. What is this but great replacement theory type stuff? This is just straight up Nazi bullshit from start to finish. The idea that this isn't a far right thing is absurd. These are the people that claim to support women and girls. You'll never see them, say, rioting over the fact that a former Tory Home Secretary and former Tory Prime Minister, Theresa May, lost a dossier of information about the Westminster paedophile ring. That was just ignored. That's fine. You don't ask questions about that. That's fine. Absolutely fine. The number of Conservative members of Parliament, and indeed Labour members of Parliament, who've been done for sex crimes. Again, this isn't really even looked into. You won't see anyone breaking into a Greggs or a Sports Direct and stealing a tray of, steak bakes or whatever on that basis. It's only when an immigrant does something or is claimed to have done something that anything happens like this. We had the same problem in Northern Ireland very recently. It's a grotesque abuse of the goodwill, I think, of a lot of people who do want to protect people from crimes, be crimes done by white people, crimes done by BME people, crimes done by immigrants, crimes done by people who were born here, whatever. When these right-wing idiots turn up for a row, it's the same football hooligan idiocy that you see all the time. And, of course, we have to say we condemn the attacks on the police, because attacking the police is always bad in all situations. Honestly, fash on fash violence, I don't care who wins. Everyone wins. The police also showing their true grit and determination there. When a relatively small group of people kick off, they drove away. So who's to protect the denizens of that city and that place? Epping, by the way, the final stop on the Central Line. A fact I definitely knew before looking into this story. Honest. It's really depressing. It's really depressing. Nigel Farage and his ilk have again started more race riots. Year after year. He's a cancerous carbuncle. When he talks about the corruption, the councillor there, when he talks about corruption, he needs to look in the mirror, because his soul has been corrupted by his right-wing hateful politics.
Of course, when people link the first riots to Nigel Farage, which polls show, by the way, a lot of people believe that. It's not just the lefties saying that. They'll claim plausible deniability. We have nothing to do with these riots. We just saw a video of a Reform councillor. He's at the protests / riots. He's talking about the country being diluted, right? You cannot say Reform and these riots are inseparable or separate.
Not.
They're not. They're linked in a way. And I also wanted to push back to people who say, because there's I hear it so often now, when we say, look, these are far-right thugs, and then they go, is it far-right to care about children? Because obviously they make it very vague, right? Well, of course, everyone cares about kids. The point, though, and you kind of alluded to it, right? If you're protesting and throwing bottles and, starting fights when an asylum seeker or an immigrant commits a crime, but you completely ignore it when a British person does it, right? Your interest is not about the crime itself and protecting kids. It's so you can say, look how bad these people are. If you cared about the crime, you'd be angry no matter what. Now, for me, I don't care. You're black, you're white, you're British, you're not British, you're an asylum seeker, an immigrant. I don't give a fuck. If you're decent, I'm with you. If you're a piece of shit, then you're a piece of shit. But these people on the right, these people who protest and riot, again, say fuck all when it comes to the Tory paedophile ring, which is very prevalent, and that's within power as well. Yep. So it's so plainly obvious, and that's why I try and want to communicate to people who are potentially getting swept up by this by saying, I'm sick of the far right or people labeling everything the far right. We're not labeling everything the far right. We just know when something's far right.
Exactly, yeah. It's so obvious. It's so nakedly obvious that they're racially motivated rather than for the protection of anyone, frankly, given their support for people like Donald Trump, who is, an Epstein client if ever I've seen one, or indeed the royal family, who is replete with them. Of course, the sweaty nonce being the most prime example. The grooming gangs inquiries, you can tell the people who actually care and want answers and justice, and the people like Nigel Farage who don't, because they will often preface their request for the grooming gang inquiry with Pakistani grooming gang or Asian grooming gang, because they only want to investigate it when brown people are doing it. Anyone who actually cared about women and girls, or indeed boys, because let's be honest, men are being abused in that situation as well, you'd want justice for all people, regardless of the perpetrators. But no, they only want their political weapon. They only want it when it's a person of colour doing the crime. That's the only thing they're interested in. When it's a white person, whatever.
It would be nice to see the same amount of anger from these people directed at who's that royal, the royal nonce?
Prince Andrew.
Prince Andrew. Right, and you've got people because they love the royal family so much, like yeah, bad, but no, there's no fucking but here. And I guess what we were outraged because this is a person in power. He's going to get away with these potential crimes, and we can see it for what it is because he's privileged, right? That pisses us off. But these same people don't give a shit.
Yeah,
but as soon as they can pin it on a brown person, that's it.
There weren't riots when those revelations came out.
No, exactly.
When he, through the Queen, by the way, the late Queen, paid £12 million to the estate of Virginia Giuffre, the now unfortunately late. It's interesting, isn't it, how Epstein's victims always end up just randomly dying. Crazy, I know. To Virginia Giuffre's foundation, to cover up for crimes that supposedly he didn't commit. Are the royal family in the habit of giving £12 million out randomly to people that they've never met, that they don't have any connection to whatsoever? No, this man is guilty. Prince Andrew is a pederast. I'll happily say that, and if he wants to sue me, I'd fucking love it. It'd be amazing. The discovery process on that would be breathtaking. And, of course, it'd be great for the channel as well. I'll get Turn Left, the exclusive on it, mate. Anyway. So he's a pederast, absolutely. And when that was revealed, when he came out and said he didn't regret having that relationship with Jeffrey Epstein on TV in front of a camera, there were not riots. No Greggs was smashed into. No police vans were attacked.
Quite right. No police was attacked and no Greggs was smashed in. Very good. Let's wrap up the stories and we'll go to our producer for your comments. Let's say hello to Lewis. How are we?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Lovely. Also, how are we all doing?
Just interestingly, I could hear you when you said you thought I couldn't hear you earlier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
and I was trying to say something to Curtis, but I don't think he had the feed on where he could hear me. But we're all good.
I heard you, and my people heard you.
Hello,
But the
Kev's
one
people.
person you wanted to hear didn't hear you.
Pretty much. Sounds like the story of my life.
Yeah, it's almost poetic. Water everywhere and not a drop.
Sad and poetic.
So we had some cool comments today, but we'll do the super chats. Let me see if I can pair these two together, because Border Prince said, "Curtis, you look great in HD," and then because you look so great, you gave a £10 donation.
Wow, was that for me or was that for the channel? I don't know. I'm gonna say because of me. I think I made some settings on the camera to make it look a bit better, so I think it has improved the quality.
I didn't think you could look any better.
Oh, stop it! Stop it! There's no such thing as a ceiling, though, Kev. You always go higher if you want.
Exactly. I'm just saying, everybody. That's what we call Riz.
Riz, skibidi Riz toilet. I learned that like not too long ago, and I can't stop fucking saying it because all the kids say it. It's so funny. I don't know why. It makes no sense. It just makes me laugh so much.
Absolute rubbish. New memes are rubbish. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know.
You guys are just getting old. That's what it is. That's it. James Holmes gave 5 term.
Thank you, James.
Left
Good to
membership,
see you
so
again.
Thank you very much. And off to the lovely, amazing comments. We'll start from the top. So let's go straight to Diane Abbott. Or was this an excuse to leave the party with a bang? She has been pushing it, right? If we think back to since Labour got into power, she's had lots of interviews where she has sometimes kind of like indirectly, like absolutely slanted.
She's goading him, isn't she? She's really goading, and I fucking love it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. She's been pushing the envelope, but I don't think it's because she wanted to get thrown out. I think she just couldn't give less of a shit. Like she knows, like it's like when you've handed in your notice at your work and you're like, I've got 2 weeks. I'm not putting any effort into this. I'm not holding the line here. I am phoning this shit in. I don't care. And she's just like, well, I'll just say what I want now. I don't have to pretend to be like some ultra professional politician. I can just say, no, Keir Starmer's a wanker. Sack, mate.
Late stage Diane has been absolutely fucking peak.
It's been beautiful, yeah.
It's been incredible. And we say late stage, not of her life, but late stage of the Labour Party. And then she'll hopefully has a very long, fulfilling life afterwards.
Speaking of Epping, though, right now, I don't because obviously, I revealed on camera earlier, I live not too far away from Epping. That's all I'm going to say.
And then I told you that it was the last stop on the Circle line as well, didn't I?
Central line. But right now, I can hear right now. I can hear the voices of dozens of men cheering and shouting. So I wonder if the protests are continuing on today. I don't live that close to the hotel, but I live in transit on the way, and now I can hear loads of people screaming outside my window. So I wonder, should I go get some live footage? No, I'm only joking. I'm not moving from my chair. But. Yeah, no. Do you remember that interview with Victoria Derbyshire when I think Diane Abbott was bringing out her book? And I think I can't remember the exact question, but Victoria Derbyshire was just like, "Oh, do you support Keir Starmer?" And she was like, "I have been with the Labour Party for however many years, and I support the Labour Party." And she's like, "Yeah, but do you like him as a leader?" And she just kind of like looked at the camera, almost like an office style.
Can I tell you something here as well? Right? Can I tell you something?
Then the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme started playing in the background as well. Yeah.
My partner's gran, right? I mean, they're all that side of the family are fucking staunch conservative, right? They despise Jeremy Corbyn, and she said, "I've got a lot of respect for Diane Abbott for doing that." She was like, "Do you know what?" Because they all fucking hate Keir Starmer. I mean, I guess this is where the left and the right really agree. We fucking despise him for very different reasons, and she was like, I've got a lot of time for Diane for that, speaking truth. And I was like, well, you should have been paying more attention because the left is happy to criticise Labour even when we're all sort of part of that party once upon a time. So yeah, maybe there's a lot of people who were convinced by Diane Abbott or liked what they saw. But I mean, I certainly liked it. It was basically saying, I support Labour, but fuck Keir Starmer.
Yeah, but I remember I did the only problem I had with the original letter, the ginger thing is funny because it's so ridiculous. But when it came to the racism part of it, I understand the hierarchy of racism, and I think that's what she was aiming at, and I will back her on that. I think it's because a lot of people don't understand that when it comes to Jewish people and other groups, there is racism involved, and there is a difference between anti-Semitism and racism, but they also intersect as well. Because you'll get get people who are if you're a literal neo-Nazi, then you are a racist. But there are people who might just say something like a stereotype of Jewish people, and that will be anti-Semitic. Because let's not forget that the Nazis literally made them into a race through like racial propaganda. So there is an element of it. She's right on the like perception, as in like, yeah, if you see like a person walking down the street and they're not wearing anything which would indicate that they're Jewish, like traditional to a specific diaspora, then yeah, they're not going to have obviously the same experience as a black person, which is 100% true. But people do forget that racial structures do exist within certain groups, that even though people could look similar to us, racial structures do still exist within those groups. In terms of what they suffered from.
But I don't think she ever denied that, because I mean, we didn't have it in that clip because I didn't want to have too long of a clip. But the interview, the interviewer asked Diane like, "Oh, but do you accept that anti-Semitism still exists and people still face prejudice and racism?" She's like, "Of course I do." But the point I'm trying to make is, like, if someone's 100 yards away, you can't tell if they're Jewish, right? You may never tell someone's Jewish based on their looks, and that's why, in a way, like anti-black racism and Islamophobia is a lot more visceral and can be more dangerous, because if you're walking through a community and you're a person of colour, you could get beaten up for it. I mean, actually, in the race riots last year, we saw videos of black people literally getting hunted down. Fucking pogroms, right? Yeah. And not to say, because obviously in Nazi Germany there were pogroms against Jewish people, but today in a multicultural, multiracial society, it's apparent, if you're black or brown, whereas if you're a white Jewish person, you're not. And I think that was all she was saying. I think in terms of the ginger comment, that's obviously where I said it was so dumb in the original letter, but it's worth noting that apparently that wasn't the final draft. But I am thinking, why would you put that in any draft anyway? So I don't know, but
because my defense of her was like, I understand her intention, but it was poorly written, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the actual letter.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Edward, Sex B, the legend that he is. Remember, folks, Diane suffered about half of all the online abuses aimed at MPs as tracked in 2024. I think there's an older study than that as well. I think they did one when she was actually in the shadow cabinet. And I think it was somewhere like they did a specific one which was just on Twitter at the time. And it was something like 60% of all abuse directed at MPs. Diane Abbott got like 60% of it. That's definitely a study that exists somewhere in that region from around 2016, 17.
It's not surprising, but it also just goes to show you what fucking balls she has.
Yeah.
Just to sticking with this. She's been around, nearly 40 years now as an MP, and she's must carry her balls around in a wheelbarrow. Amazing.
I mean, it's sad to say, but she's probably used to it. I mean, she is used to it.
Yeah,
I mean,
you'd have to be. You'd have to get I absolutely feel for Myrie Black, the SNP MP, who not resigned. She stood down at the last election because she didn't want any part of this anymore. Like, understandably, it's going to get to you, especially if you're a woman, and especially if you're a woman of colour or a queer person or some other minority group. You're going to cop it, right? Because that's just unfortunately the way in which the system, the racist patriarchal system works. So you have to have an unbelievably thick skin just to be able to survive, let alone thrive and become, one of the most biggest badasses in the chamber,
Yeah, I'll never forget the comment from, I think it was Dawn Butler in an interview when she was first in Parliament, where she got, like, it was one of her first days or weeks there, and she got into the lift, which is only meant for, like, MPs or something like that. I can't remember the exact situation, but when she got into the lift, like, another MP said to her, "Oh, this lift isn't for the cleaners."
Yeah.
I'll never forget
honestly,
that.
At that point, you should be able to drop your head on him. Just
yeah, absolutely.
Like you get one free nut shot or something,
Yeah. Jacqueline put, if Diane either leaves the Labour and stands as an independent or joins the Green Party with the Corbyn or Sultana, she's very popular. I brought this comment up because, if I remember correctly, I don't know if it was the same Victoria Derbyshire interview or a completely separate interview with Diane Abbott, but she basically admitted that they tried to bribe her with a seat in the House of Lords, and she basically stayed to spite them. So I don't think she's going to run again.
I don't think she is. I think it was basically she was going to stand down at the last election, but because of that bribe, she was like, do you know what? Fuck you. Which, again, I absolutely love. So I think her involvement with maybe this Corbyn party will be purely like campaigning as a face, And I think good for her, because at the end of the day, sometimes I don't want to see an MP carry on like Diane Abbott, because like she's getting so much. She doesn't deserve any of this shit, and she's getting so much shit. And I kind of want her to rest.
Yeah,
so
you're allowed a retirement.
You're allowed a fucking retirement, and same with Jeremy Corbyn. But that fucker ain't going to retire. He's going to carry on until he drops dead. He will.
They're going to
die.
They're going to drag his corpse out of the Commons. Yeah,
he will. I think Jeremy Corbyn will die at a protest because he's not going to rest.
Yeah, interestingly though, if someone does die in the Commons, they always say that they didn't, because technically under the law, if a person dies in the House of Commons or the House of Lords, we get a national day's holiday in respect. So they have to pretend that they died on arrival at the hospital, even if they're literally cold.
Because they don't give us a fucking day off. Yeah. Well, we could have just voted for Jeremy Corbyn. He would have given us more days off. Remember that?
True. And he would have nationalised the sausages.
And I just wanted to show another comment from Edward. Arming a genocidal ethno-state is okay, but saying the wrong thing that libs don't get / choose to ignore is worse, apparently.
Exactly. This is the adults in the room. Genocide good, saying things bad.
Yeah. The hierarchy of racism. I'm so insulted. Anyway, how much shall we send into Israel to bomb innocent children? Got it. Let's increase the funding for them. It's fucking bullshit. This is pure liberal virtue signaling, identity politics bollocks. Anyone who... This is the thing, right? On this show, I did it when I last covered her first suspension, right? I've criticised Diane Abbott's comments in that Observer letter, right? But I can do that, right? Whereas Keir Starmer or these liberal hacks or even right-wingers who criticising Diane Abbott, you can fuck off. Because for me, I actually take racism seriously. Whereas Keir Starmer doesn't give a fuck about racism. So if he wants to grandstand and kick out a black woman MP, the first black woman MP in Parliament, you can fuck off. Like, it matters where the criticism's coming from. I will happily listen to criticisms of Diane Abbott from the left. But if I hear it from these mainstream hacks and people inside the Labour Party, get the fuck out of it. You've done far worse. You've facilitated a fucking genocide. You don't get to talk on these issues.
Yep.
Also as well, just to point out, because obviously it's not just racism that plays into this as well; it's misogyny and sexism.
Yeah,
because
it's misogynoir, actually.
There's a lot of reporting on this, especially from a lot of female reporters in the press, that they have noticed that a lot of the women who get reported on, who get leaked on from the Labour Party, and who have been ousted or who are even being rumoured to be replaced, it's mostly women. You can track this all the way back to Sue Gray, to Louise Hay, to Lisa Nandy's apparently might be getting replaced, maybe Bridget Phillipson, obviously. Even though we can all criticise Rachel Reeves, we know an element of her criticism is simply because she is a woman. And we know as well, obviously, Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner do not get along, and Morgan McSweeney despises Angela Rayner. And it is a coincidence that when we think about most of the stories that we've had with the drama of Labour, it doesn't actually often involve the men versus men. It's always the men versus the women most of the time, which I also found quite interesting.
I mean, he's such a misogynist, he literally made her cry the other day.
Yeah.
Terrible.
The fish rots from the head.
Yes, I'm actually going to bring up another comment by Edward. He's on fire today. Straight onto the voting stuff now. So, because gerrymandering and voter ID requirements isn't rigging the ballot, huh? Which is obviously the point that you brought up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But as Kevin said, though, it's projection. This is what the right wing do. I think the right wing projects so much is because they deep down must know that they are fundamentally wrong about what they're saying, and they know that the criticisms of them are salient, so they deploy it on other people, right? When you have gerrymandering and voter ID, that is quite literally rigging the electorate, and it's almost as if right wingers know that they support rigging the electorate. They know it's a good point, and that's why they put it on other people, because it's like, well, that's a good point. Maybe we can just fucking put it on them. But of course, saying we want more people to vote as rigging is absolutely fucking insane. But so is the modern right wing. I mean, you could argue that the right wing's always been insane, but I think particularly in the last 5 to 10 years, they've all gone fucking batshit crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Edward did put another comment somewhere just to point out, because this is true. Like, every time, essentially, there's been like a change to who can actually vote, who can access it from 21 to 18 and so on, votes for women. There was always a similar argument in place, right? It was always, There was always this right-wing backlash, and it was mostly right-wing backlash to any sort of new group or age being eligible for voting.
Well, exactly. Well, I'll say to Julie Hartley-Brewer, I don't think the smears against the suffragettes were fair. I think women were clever enough to vote and are now clever enough to vote. But she, as an example of women, is not a great example of that particular gender and their ability to understand politics and therefore vote.
Yeah, and I fucking hate listening to corporate hacks like Julie Hartley-Brewer, because she was saying, oh, look, all these lefty teachers indoctrinating kids and now they all get to vote. And I'm like, okay, so the education system is indoctrinating kids with education. You are propagandizing people on the behalf of billionaires and corporations. Like the fucking gall to sit here and say, we're indoctrinating our kids. While your entire show and those like you talk about fucking woke veganism, flags, all hurty words. That's all you talk about, and you want to act like you're the fucking intelligent one. All of you right-wing hacks are so fucking childish. That's what you talk about, right? You tune in to turn left, you're going to get 2 hours or hour and a half of, a little bit of swearing, but intelligent analysis and conversation. Back and forth. We really like to dig deep on issues, right?
And sexiness.
You go on to Talk TV and it's woke. It's so fucking embarrassing. I mean, look at James Whale on his shitty show.
How is he still alive?
That guy's still alive. All these people are fucking clowns. And then they have the audacity to say the education system is indoctrinating people. Education is education. It's facts in real life.
The guy who said you could grow concrete thinks that 16 and 17-year-olds are too stupid to vote. Okay, mate.
Look, if people want to argue that 16 and 17-year-olds shouldn't vote, then we should have a cap on people voting, because what we do know is typically when you get to a certain age, there's cognitive decline. Now, of course, as a leftist, I believe in mass enfranchisement, right? I want everyone to vote from 16 to the day you die. I support that. But if you're going to go and say, oh, kids are too young to vote, well, then maybe 70-year-olds shouldn't fucking vote then, because, again, not all 70-year-olds, some are the fucking clued up, but you can't really discount the idea that there is going to be some kind of cognitive decline. I mean, when you get to a certain age, you no longer become open-minded. You become more sure of your own views. You become more closed-minded. Therefore, debate doesn't matter. You're never going to have your mind changed. So if you're 60, 70 years old and you have this worldview, the next 10, 20 years of your life, you're not going to be convinced by anything. So why don't we flip it on that and say, if you're too old, don't fucking vote.
Yeah, exactly.
You
don't have a personal stake in the future. You don't get to vote because you're not going to be here in 20 years. So why should you vote on such a thing? Yeah, it's nonsense. Yeah, every act that trying to restrict the franchise is always some right-wing gerrymandering.
Of course
bullshit.
it is.
Yeah, so just a few days before, the Telegraph were pushing out their propaganda, and Reform jumped on it when Angela Rayner announced that they were going to change how mayoral elections, how they're going to use the voting system, because the Tories changed it to first past the post. It was originally, I can't remember what the system's called, but it's basically effectively a type of ranked choice voting where you can put your favourite candidate and your second favourite candidate. So it's not proper ranked choice voting, it's just two.
Alternative vote, yeah.
Yeah, it's AV then, isn't it?
AV, that's it. Yeah, AV, or is it SV? Stands for something else, like a selective vote. I can't remember. Anyway,
AV is the one where you only get two choices, 1 and 2.
Okay, yeah.
No, it's AC or DC. Yeah.
Anyway, so do you know the Telegraph? Their headline was, Labour are changing how votes are working at mayoral elections after Reform perform well. And in their introduction to the article, it says that Angela Rayner is doing a radical change. And then it only mentions at the very bottom, very, very bottom of the article, is actually this is how mayoral elections were done before the Tories changed it only a few years ago.
Well, this is the thing. This is what they do. It's the ratchet effect thing, isn't it? Of they constantly push further and further right, and it never goes back. It never swings back to the right. They talk about like having a tax rate of X percentage, and they're like, oh, if we had that, it would destroy the country. We could never survive. It would be apocalyptic. And you find out that 23 years ago, it was like nearly twice that amount or something. Like the corporate tax rate is infinitesimally smaller than it used to be. The overall tax rate is massively smaller than it used to be. But we can't have taxation on anything because we'd be able to spend money on things and have a functioning country that anything worked in.
It's so funny how these people who are like, we want to go back to the Great Britain of the old, you'd fucking hate it. Taxes were at 90%. Public services ran for the public, not privatisation. You had no austerity. You had investment. Shit fucking worked, right? Yeah. And these people are like, I want to go back to the good old days. What obviously they mean is, more white people. But like, you'd hate it in that time. You'd see more white people, but you'd be more miserable because, the policies of the left. And again, I wouldn't say it's necessarily left wing. I don't count Clement Attlee as particularly left wing, but he was, compared to fucking today's standards, fucking communist. But like, they were social democratic policies.
Well, exactly, yeah. Because the thing is, the Conservative Party aren't the Conservative Party, and the Labour Party aren't the Labour Party anymore.
Yeah.
The Conservatives are neoliberal, and so the Labour Party now. But there used to be a genuinely kind of social democratic Labour Party and a one nation Tory party, and they all agreed, the post-war consensus, that actually you needed to invest in infrastructure in order to have a viable, ongoing British government, because we couldn't rely on just extracting money from the empire anymore. We were going to need to actually invest in ourselves to some extent, and so they did. And it was they managed to take a situation where a quarter of the nation's wealth was destroyed by the most apocalyptic war in human history. Nations, cities lay in ruins, and they were able to not just rebuild, but rebuild and become a much better country in general. Dare I say it, a home fit for heroes, with an NHS and nationalised industries that worked for people rather than for profit.
Sound like a commie there.
Put me in the gulags, man. Love it.
Please discuss, because I've been an advocate for something similar to Australia for many years. Voting should be compulsory, as in Australia. And just to add on, voting in Australia is incredibly easy. You can vote anywhere in the country. They make it super easy to sign up, register, and you can vote anywhere. They have literally, somebody mentioned this in the comments, I've seen this before, they have polling booths at beaches and stuff like that. They really encourage everybody to be involved. And data has proven that because voters have to vote, they're more informed.
Yeah. I think it's a great policy, and I used to be against it as well, but I've changed my mind. I used to have that stupid idea where I was like, I might insult you if you disagree.
You are insulting me.
Okay.
I'll change your mind, Kevin, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, I think it's. I don't want to be too much of a libertarian here, but I think you should have the right to not have to vote, especially when in a lot of seats in Britain there are no good candidates. Frankly, if there weren't a Green Party person standing in my constituency, I would have nobody to vote for.
Yeah, but you could just draw a big cock on the ballot.
I can spoil a ballot. I can, absolutely. The only situation I would ever support, I think, and I still don't think I'd do it here, but if we ever did introduce such a thing, I think there'd have to be a none of the above box.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, look,
which they would never allow, because we know for a fact that none of the above would win in a fucking landslide.
True. You should call yourself the not the above party and fucking get a 400.
Well, there literally was. There was back in the day. There were literally men who dressed up as nuns and called themselves the none of the above party.
Very good, very good. I mean, look, I think it's important because I think because of the utility in forcing people to vote. I mean, I want to frame it that way, right? But the utility outweighs the. I mean, I don't even see any cons to not doing it, right? But where Lewis is saying is, it forces you to be more informed because you go and have to vote. It forces you to participate. And the thing is, though,
but I don't like the element of coercion in any of that. I'm sorry, you shouldn't.
But then you shouldn't
have to force them into a situation. You should have a system which forces the politicians to engage the electorate.
True, but
not force the electorate to engage with all the politicians.
But I would argue, right, that without mandatory voting, you have mass coercion for people not to vote, whether it's voter ID laws, whether it's the mainstream media telling you to vote.
Yeah.
And I think to me, the way I see it is you're being coerced to not engage in the political system. So, and look, I think
you're being coercion. I think is a difficult one to argue there. I think you're certainly being strongly encouraged, and I agree. Media pluralism. Whatever, anyway. Pluralism is the word I was looking for, is really important. And I think a lot of these media conglomerates need to be broken up. I don't think all of the media should be owned by 4 fucking people, especially when they all agree on everything. But that's not an argument to force people to have to engage in that system. We should try and change that system, because the system is what's broken, not the people.
Yeah,
No, but
I mean, go on,
I
Lewis.
think-
You have a go.
No, so I do think it's a bit of both, though. I think to get people to almost like fix, because a democracy is made up of many elements, right? And I do think, obviously, the main part of that is the people. And if people are disenfranchised, I think sometimes you do need to kick up the arse to force people to be franchised into the system, so therefore that they can make the change and see that the change that they're making. Because you have there's many things guaranteed in life. The good old saying, you're born, you'll die, and you'll pay taxes. And there's other things as well in society. You have to do jury service. We have to compel people to do lots of things. I think politics is everything, and every part of your life is affected by politics, and therefore I think people should participate. But in Australia, just to add as well, because voting is so easy, you don't even have to leave your house. We are talking about people just simply have to post something, and that is it. And that is the minimum.
Well, again, I think we should.
That requires too much coercion at all.
We should open up all of these things. I think you should be able to get a postal vote absolutely at will. I think you should have lots of these other avenues open to you. I'm sure there's technology that can be used. There's maybe a voting app or something. I don't know. I'm sure there are ways in which you can open up the franchise, indeed to 16 and 17-year-olds, for instance. But I think your position is, dare I say, the slightly cocked position of saying, and I don't mean that in like a really horrible. I mean in the sense that you're essentially trying to put the onus. Yeah, fair enough. You're trying to put the onus on the people to have to engage. When there's nothing incumbent upon you to engage. If you don't want to, you don't have to. People fought for your right to vote, but also for your right not to vote, not to be forced by your government to have to engage with a corrupt government. And Australia has a corrupt government as much as Britain has a corrupt government. And I don't think it's the people that should be forced to engage with the electorate. It's the people should be forced to engage with the government. The government should be made to be engaging with the people and engaging to the people. For me,
I think you're right on that point, though.
Backwards. I don't think that the problem doesn't lie with the people. Okay, the people own the power. It's the politicians who have corrupted the entire fucking thing that need to be done away with.
I agree with that, and I think the government should be doing that. And the way I see it is, I think there's only so much people can do. So, for example, when Jeremy Corbyn became Labour leader, he definitely got so many people excited, people who never voted before, right?
This is precisely what I mean.
But hold on, let me finish my point quickly. But there were still people who were disenfranchised. There were still people who were saying, Jeremy Corbyn's going to do free tuition fees. I don't believe him. And I do think there comes a point where a politician or the political system, however you change it, is never going to get every single person, because there are still going to be people out there who. But then maybe
that's absolutely fine. I don't necessarily want 100% turnout all the time. I think there are some people, if you don't engage with the political system, you shouldn't be encouraged to vote, because you are a low information person who doesn't engage with the system. So you just going and putting your ex in a random box or next to the guy that you met or whatever, or because your dad voted that way or whatever, cancelling out my informed vote, I don't see that works out really well either.
I think as well, like, just to add one last point on this, I think because there are so many systems in society which actively disenfranchise people with that purpose, whether it's through pushing propaganda, failing, corruption, all of these things, and it's beyond the power of many voters. I think the only way to counter that disenfranchisement is by making people engage, because I feel like if people were forced to be engaged, we would see other institutions disengage from trying to make people become disengaged. And I feel like if we fill out a census, once every 10 years and it takes 20 minutes to fill out, I don't see a problem with somebody having to fill out a quick ballot out once every 5 years.
Well, that's more.
I don't think it involves too much coercion.
But no, it doesn't take that much coercion, and I'm not arguing it in the same way that, like, I oppose people being put in concentration camps or something like that. It's obviously a very different level of coercion. And if it was introduced, I wouldn't riot about it or stop paying taxes or something as a protest, right? I'm just saying, I think on a kind of conceptual, intellectual basis, I don't like it, and I don't think it's necessary. I think, if this system was so brilliant at engaging and surpassing these corrupt systems, why do those corrupt systems seem unchanged in Australia? I don't think people in Australia have a considerably better view of their government now than they did 20 years ago.
I think that's a very good point, though. I still believe in compulsory voting, but I think that's a good point that Australia has a far more robust. Sorry.
Yeah, no, Rupert Murdoch still owns all of the media.
Yeah, exactly.
They still have all of the racist bullshit. You still have that fucking millionaire prick putting out his adverts and buying loads of media time, whatever his name, the weird yellow poster guy. So the Australian system, whilst I mean it might have improved things in some marginal senses, I don't think people are happy with the Australian government. They don't seem.
That's a very good point. But also, Specs has come after you there, Kev Rand. I mean, like...
To which I say, eat my balls.
I love this debate, but I feel sorry for the other commenters.
So we didn't actually get. We got lots of comments on the Epping story, but lots of it was just many jokes.
But we can see some of them, can't we?
Well, I didn't actually star them because I wanted to, add in comments. But we can try and I can try and find some of them. Oh, there's so many comments. But a lot of it was.
We laugh at fascism in their face.
Yeah, but I think there's something to be said, though, and I don't know how to articulate this properly, and I am saying this as a guy from a council estate in the north. There is something about, like, the psychology of the weaponization of the, like, poorer working class man, which they know are willing to take up violence, because even though there might be a few people in that crowd who, quote-unquote, have, what we would say are better jobs or more middle-class jobs, you don't see lawyers, like, if there are plenty of finance bros, lawyers and solicitors who vote reform, we know that there are lots of professionals who vote reform. They're not the people who are going to happily take up arms on the street. There is something about, like, the weaponization and psychology.
I suppose they have more to lose, right?
They've taken the old football hooligan culture that still sort of exists but bubbles away under the surface. It's not the mainstream it once was. And the very disenfranchisement that we've been talking about, I suppose, with the working class has only deepened over that time. So that groundswell of people hasn't gone away. That violence hasn't gone away. It's just now being used in an exclusively far-right way, in a way that wasn't necessarily the case when it was just about kicking shit out of each other on a Saturday.
But I think as well that if you're a middle-class lawyer, you do have more to lose. If you're someone working class who doesn't have... They're not in a great position materially. They feel like they have nothing, so like, fuck it. Oh, put me in jail. Why do I give a fuck? And I think that exact feeling of disenfranchisement is where we need to be and help these people and help their material conditions. But of course, with that, I mean, people are very dangerous when they feel like they haven't got anything to lose, because they can be very dangerous. And I think it doesn't mean that, like, the right wing and the far right's main voting bloc is working class people, because I actually think that if you look at reform, it's probably mostly wealthier people and older people.
Yeah, it's middle
class. But those that are rioting on the streets are probably very working class people because they have nothing to lose.
Yeah. And also, let's be honest, it's always, as is the case, the infrastructure, when it's something bad, always gets put in working class areas. I know this for a fact. There's an immigrant centre just up that way, and there's a halfway house for drink people that have been coming out of jail, right? And I live in a very, very working class area, very, very poor area. And so, like, that's what happens. They're not setting up immigrant centres in Kensington and Chelsea. They're setting them up in Epping or Birmingham or inner city Manchester or wherever. They're putting them in places where the working class have to put up with it. So naturally, if there's going to be tension, if there's going to be hatred stirred up in local communities, it's going to be in those communities. You're not going to see it in Surbiton.
Yeah.
I also think as well, like, just coming from, like, my background as well, being that, like, you see, like, social media people making jokes about, like, people who are from council estates, and they'll do, like, just joke about council estate drama. There is almost something about, like, being from those type of backgrounds where you almost kind of, like, love being involved and almost enjoy kind of that local drama of what's going on. And I can guarantee that a lot of people have just shown up there just for the sake of the idea of drama. And to an extent, a lot of these people who want to go out and cause trouble, and it ties into what you're saying, Kevin, about football hooliganism, they love the excuse to do this. I think they actually enjoy it in many ways. Yeah,
there's something freeing about living on the outside of the situation, because usually if you smash a police car window in, you get arrested instantly. But knowing that you have the power to do so, at least for the time being, freely, and if you cover your face, you'll probably get away with it, type thing. It's a thrill, it's a buzz.
I also wonder
adrenaline kick for these.
I also wonder, right, that it's a sense of community, even though it's not community, and it's actually very, very disruptive for communities. But feeling as if you're part of something, I think people yearn for that.
There's
so I
power
think this
in
could
the
be
crowd, yeah.
Yeah, and it sort of traces back to sort of Thatcherism, sort of individualism, right? You cannot force individualism on a society, because society is a fucking society. And I think when you do
we're a
that,
communal species, yeah.
We are a social species, right?
Yeah.
And I think what happens is that when you try and smash the social fabric, it's never going to go away, but it's going to bubble up in very dangerous ways. And I think I personally think that is how it manifests in these sorts of riots, because people always want to feel like they're part of something bigger than them. And unfortunately, it's not one of hope and community and changing the world for the better. But when you smash hope and you tell people things can't really get better, then people are going to find other ways to feel like they're part of something in community, but maybe it's against immigrants and asylum seekers. So I think it's to me, not that it didn't pre-exist before Thatcher, of course it did, but I do think that class, individualism, smashing of the public realm has really, really driven part of this. I mean, that's why you can see a lot of left behind people, places where you can link people's material conditions to this, where their factories are closed and their jobs are gone. They feel like they have nothing left and they want to be part of something.
I don't think it really did exist much before Thatcher. Not to say that economic hardship didn't fall on people, that the industry had begun because that economic process predated Thatcher to a degree. But the social dislocation that led to this sort of thing, there's a reason that football hooliganism starts in the late 70s, but becomes a real problem in the 1980s, a very deadly problem, of course, as we've seen in many places, and has continued ever since. That social dislocation has never been corrected because the conditions which led to it have intensified.
Yeah.
As well, I think it's worth noting, because I did watch some of the footage as well from other people. I actually came across somebody who was live streaming it as well. And it was reminiscent of Southport in the sense of when, I think it was day 2 of Southport, when there was everything kicking off outside Downing Street. I happened to be meeting up with Cal from Turn Left. And we saw on Twitter that they were all over there. It wasn't kicking off yet. We went down. There were no people holding any signs. People couldn't name the names of the children. Alex, Alexei, Bibi, and oh my god, I forgot the third name now. I feel terrible for trying to even do it. And they were all carrying crates of beer, and they were all just throwing bottles. They were literally loaded up as if they were going to a festival. And there is an element of enjoyment of this that they have.
It's the same. It's the EDL, the new generation. It's less guided because it's not like an organised thing like the EDL was. But it's essentially the same social conditions that led to football hooliganism, that led to the EDL, have led to this new wave, this new generation of wankers who want to get tanked up and smash the place up, in lieu of like a constructive critique of the situation they find themselves in.
And the issue that we have, and just to make this final point, because that's the last of the comments, is that it goes back to as well like the Southport, where it was misinformation. Obviously, it was a tragedy, but misinformation that surrounded it is that they keep attempting to make this happen, and every so often they are going to be successful. They keep attempting to make this happen of false information, but every time this happens, and it is actually the correct facts, they completely forget about every other time that they were either lied to or misled, and they feel vindicated if it's the 10th time they've been told this has happened, and it's the only time that it's actually real. As long as it happens once, they feel completely vindicated in what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
But that's it for the comments, guys. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lewis.
Except that one that you've still got on the screen.
Oh yeah, actually, Curtis put that up. There we go. Right, have a good weekend, everyone.
That was not deliberate. Thank you so much, Lewis. Of course, that is all we have time for. Thank you so much, Kevin, for joining me again tonight. Your insights are absolutely incredible.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, Kevin will still be streaming, so we're going to be raiding into him. So don't go anywhere, because you'll be automatically transported over to Kevin. Remember to like the stream, and if you're not a subscriber, then hit that button. I just want to say, tonight has been a very good show, right? Do you get this kind of in-depth analysis and discussion anywhere else? Do you get it on the BBC? Do you get it on clips of Talk TV on Twitter? Do you get it on the mainstream media? No, you don't, because obviously they don't care. They talk in sound bites because it's there for entertainment. It's there to push propaganda for the billionaires and the corporations, not the working class. But of course, we do. We have long, engaging discussions. We also engage with our community and the comment section because you guys have really good points, ideas, and input. So if you want to see more of that and you want us to grow, then it's really important that we become a force on the left. So if you want us to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.com. patreon.com/supports. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly, or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you can become a YouTube member for just 99p. But thank you for everyone who tuned in. What a fantastic show. And I will see you next time.
Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.